All right, let's get into a story that is just, well, it's one of a kind. It's about a man, a wild place, and a pet so unique it was literally a scientific discovery. We're not talking about a dog or a cat here. This is about the incredible and often chaotic bond between the writer Gavin Maxwell and his otter, Midgable. You know, every really great story seems to start with some powerful emotion, and this one kicks off with loss. After his dog Johnny passed away, Gavin Maxwell felt this huge, empty space in his life. I think a lot of us know that feeling, right? That quiet corner where a friend used to be. But sometimes that kind of sadness can push you to do things you'd never, ever expect. And that right there is the question that sets this whole adventure in motion. How do you possibly fill a void that big? Well, Maxwell's answer was, let's just say it was not the usual one. It was an idea that would take him from his home in Scotland all the way to the marshes of Iraq. So think about it. What really goes into choosing a pet? For most people, it's a pretty standard list of things you gotta do. I mean, this list here kind of brings us back down to earth. Owning a pet, like a dog, is a huge deal. You've got licenses, shots, training, grooming, the right food. It is a massive long-term commitment. This is, the normal way of doing things. And then you've got Maxwell's way. While he was traveling in southern Iraq, this idea just popped into his head. Not a fish, not a parrot, an otter. He figured his remote cottage in Scotland, surrounded by water, was the perfect place for it. So he basically decided to trade in the rulebook of normal pet ownership for something completely, totally unknown. So how does an idea like that actually happen? I mean, you can't just go to the local pet store and ask for an otter. For Maxwell, it all started in Basra, where he was waiting for some mail. But as the days dragged on, it turns out something way more interesting was about to show up at his door. Just picture this for a second. You're sitting in your room, annoyed that your mail is late, and two men show up carrying a sack. A sack that is moving. They hand you a note from your friend that just says, "Here is your otter." Suddenly, this crazy idea wasn't just an idea anymore. It was squirming in a bag on his floor. And his description of what came out of that sack is just perfect. It wasn't some cute, fluffy little animal. It was caked in mud, with these little pointed scales of dried dirt all over it. He said it looked like a tiny dragon from an old medieval story. It was wild. And it was his. Now here's the kicker. This wasn't just any old otter. Zoologists figured out later that Midgable, which is what Maxwell named him, belonged to a subspecies of otter that science had never seen before. They literally named it after him, Maxwell's otter. He didn't just get a pet. He'd made a genuine scientific discovery. How wild is that? So, what's it like to have a creature unknown to science as your new roommate? Well, Maxwell was about to find out. This next part of the story is all about getting to know the unique and surprisingly clever personality of Midgba. And the change happened so fast, it was unbelievable. That first night, Midgba wanted nothing to do with him, just kept his distance. But the very next night, something clicked. He hopped up on the bed and fell asleep right in the crook of Maxwell's knees. It's this amazing moment that shows just how quickly a bond can form when you throw out all the expectations. The connection was real. Okay, so we all know otters love water, right? But Midgable took it to a whole other level. Maxwell just watched completely stunned as the otter actually figured out how to turn on the bathroom faucet all by himself. He wasn't just playing, he was actively solving a problem. It was an incredible display of intelligence. And he was just as playful as he was smart. He'd spend hours just dribbling a little rubber ball around. But his true talent, his masterpiece, was juggling. He would lie on his back and just roll and toss marbles up and down his stomach with these tiny, perfect movements, and he'd never, ever drop one. Life in Basra was one thing, but a much bigger problem was on the horizon. How do you get an otter from Iraq to England? The main British airline at the time said, absolutely not, we don't fly animals. That meant finding another airline, getting a special box made, and, well, a whole lot of stress. So, about an hour before the flight, Maxwell puts Midgable in the box. He leaves for a quick meal, and when he comes back, he sees this. Total silence from the box, and dried blood around the air holes. Just imagine the panic. He rips the lid off the box, fearing the worst.
Luckily, Midge was alive, just exhausted and scraped up from trying to tear his way out. After a mad dash to the airport, he gets him on the plane. But, of course, that's not the end of it. Mid-flight, Midgebell escapes the box. He shoots down the aisle like a furry torpedo, causing total chaos and prompting one woman to jump on her seat and start screaming, "A rat! A rat!" Against all odds, they make it to London. But if Maxwell thought the adventure was over, he was very, very wrong. This is where the story takes a fascinating turn. It becomes this amazing study of what happens when you drop a piece of the wild into the middle of a perfectly structured, civilized city. An otter on a leash in London? It was more than just a weird sight. It was a challenge to how people saw the world.
I'm just like a kid who has to touch every fence post on the way home. Midgebell developed his own little city routines. His most famous one was this daily gallop along the entire length of a primary school's low wall, completely derailing whatever class was happening inside. He was making London his own playground. Which brings us to, honestly, the funniest part of this whole story. It turns out that the average person in 1950s London had zero idea what an otter was. But oh boy, were they happy to take a guess. The guesses were just this constant stream of absurdity. A baby seal? Okay, maybe. A squirrel? A walrus? A hippo? The list is just hilarious. My personal favorites have to be a leopard that had changed its spots and somehow a brontosaur. It seems Midgebell could be anything and everything, except, an otter. But out of all the questions, all the pointing and staring, there was one moment, one single encounter, that just summed up the entire city's baffled reaction perfectly. So, picture it. Maxwell's walking Midgebell. A construction worker stops digging his hole, puts his tools down, plants his hands on his hips, and just stares. Maxwell said he looked surprised, but also offended, like he was personally insulted by how ridiculous this sight was. As Maxwell got closer, the man spat on the ground, glared, and then growled out what might be the single best question in the whole book. He didn't ask, "What is that?" He asked, "What is that supposed to be?" As if Midgebell was some kind of failed experiment, a joke, an attempt to make a normal animal that had gone horribly wrong. And in the end, that worker's question leaves us with a really fascinating thought, doesn't it? The story of Midgebell the otter isn't just about a weird pet. It's really a story about us. It shows our curiosity, our confusion, and our deep need to put a label on anything that doesn't fit in a neat little box. And it really makes you wonder, how much of the amazing world around us do we just completely miss simply because we don't have a name for it yet?